Well, joining us now is Joe Fitzsimons, Senior Policy Advisor at the Institute of Directors. Joe, thanks a lot for joining us on GB News. What's the IOD's view? You're like the boss's lobby group, if you like. Do you think people should get back to work as soon as possible?
Hi there. Thank you very much for having me. Yes, we've done quite a lot of research on this, talking to our members about what they plan on doing, moving beyond the end of the pandemic and looking towards the future. About 2/3 of our business leaders are intending to shift from working fully in the office before the pandemic to about 1 to 4 days remote beyond the pandemic. So this sort of new hybrid approach to work that we've heard a lot about. So there's no doubt the world of work has changed, and our members are very much planning on taking lots of the things that they've learned from the pandemic into the future. About 40% of our members have seen an increase in productivity as a result of this new hybrid approach and remote working, and some have also seen a reduction in productivity. So there's still some work to do, but we do expect it to change quite dramatically.
And do you think the move to flexible working will now be a permanent thing? Has the workplace changed forever?
Well, it's likely to stay around for quite a long time. I think many of us have really enjoyed the flexibility. There's also the levelling of the playing field when you think about diversity and inclusion. Those with caring responsibilities, those who might have an inability to get to the office every day, they actually have benefited hugely from being able to participate. And technology has really helped to include people and bring people onto new exciting opportunities. But for the younger people, it is challenging. There are concerns around how does that look for those younger people as they move through that very early stage in their career. We've all benefited from the ability to build strong relationships with our colleagues in the workplace, from building a network, meeting with senior stakeholders and peers. And actually, at that very early stage, it can be very challenging to get up to speed with what does the role entail and how are you supposed to perform very well when you're trying to do everything over a virtual call. It's very challenging.
We're not talking about all the workforce, of course, or even most of the workforce. A lot of people work with their hands. They work in manufacturing, they work in care homes, they work in retail, stacking shelves and so on. So not everyone can work from home by any means. But wouldn't you acknowledge, Joe, that some bosses who were originally very sceptical about office workers, the so-called laptop classes working from home, have had their minds changed? They've realised that people can be trusted to do work even if the boss isn't peering over their shoulder the whole time.
Well, absolutely. I think, of course, different organisations will have different needs. And as you say, not every role can be performed remotely or in a hybrid way. And so organisations, our members, are keen to work with their employees to find sort of the best solution for that particular employee and for the organisation. There's also that piece around sort of presenteeism, and that's very much changed now. There's a real recognition that people can perform very well, whether it be remotely or in the office. But there are some other concerns around fully remote working. For many people, coming into work is actually a big part of their social life and their ability to connect with colleagues. And there are concerns around things like loneliness and the impact on mental health. So we'll continue to discuss this with our members to understand what that longer term impact might look like. But businesses are very keen to make sure that they give as much support to individuals so that they feel that they're performing as best they can in their role and indeed for their longer term career aspirations.
We all remember starting out in the workplace. It's slightly longer ago than some of us would care to remember. But learning from those with experience, going for a drink with them, from getting their advice, just listening to how they work. That's the point that Rishi Sunak is making about younger workers not getting the benefit of learning from experience. How can we ensure that in this move to home working, we continue to mentor and teach our young people about how to get on in the workplace?
That is really key, and we believe that sort of lies within that hybrid approach. So not sort of a fully remote approach to work, also not fully face-to-face perhaps. About a third of our members have told us that they've reduced their use of the office space, and indeed some have reduced their office space in general. And about 2/3 are looking at things like access to co-working spaces, hot desking, new sort of virtual interviews. All of these things are great. But it's important to get the right balance and to make sure that individuals feel really supported. So there may be some individuals who have a preference for being present in the office the majority of the time, if not all of the time. And organizations will be really keen to make sure that they're as accommodating as possible with those needs. Equally, there may be those individuals who say that they perform far better remotely. They have caring responsibilities and other reasons that they would like to sort of have a greater proportion of their time remotely. And so we expect that, again, our members will be very, very keen to work with those individuals to find the best solution. But as you say, there's the whole piece around sort of on-the-job learning. A lot of it's informal. Those softer skills that you develop through being around colleagues, understanding how they interact with clients or customers on the phone and overhearing conversations and so on. All of that is really, really valuable. And unfortunately, it's not something that you get when you're virtually dialing into meetings day in, day out only.
A business is seeing, having changed their mind in some cases, Joe, a business is seeing some upside from working from home if they have to maintain smaller office spaces. That's less cost for business. If they can get better productivity from workers, because workers aren't exhausted by a long commute as so many were pre-pandemic. Could they also end up thinking they can pay people less because people might not have to live in cities, they can live outside in smaller towns? I guess my fear is, while I see lots of good things about working from home, it is something that businesses could exploit to kind of distance themselves from workers, give them less benefits, treat everyone as if they're part of a gig economy.
What we're seeing at the moment is an incredibly sort of competitive work environment and a very competitive job market. And actually, our members are very keen to make sure that they are as competitive as possible, so offering the best possible package of remuneration, but also the best possible flexibility and ability for the individual to fit in the way that they see themselves fitting in. And I think the biggest piece of feedback we've had actually has been around being able to widen out the reach to access talent from perhaps places that are not in, individuals who do not live in the metropolitan areas in which the role would otherwise have existed. And that's where those virtual interviews, we think they're going to be really key. About 2/3 of our members saying that they will do those virtual interviews beyond the end of the pandemic. And that really levels the playing field for workers to ensure that they can actually go forward and try to secure their sort of dream job, as it were. But there's no doubt there's quite a lot to work out. Many of the benefits, for example, that employees might have received in the past, it might have been a season ticket loan in some roles. Well, actually, maybe people don't need a season ticket loan anymore. So maybe the employer needs to consider what other benefits can they provide that those individuals can use from home. And we've seen all kinds of innovation there, employers looking at other options that they can offer to their workforce. But I think the key message here is that it's a very competitive job market, and business will continue to seek to be as compelling in that market as possible to make sure that they attract the best talent.
And yesterday we were talking about the right to disconnect from work, how a majority of workers are bothered by email, sometimes even phone calls when they're on holiday and not at work. 1 in 4,
wasn't it?
That was for phone calls, and 3 or 4 just generally disturbed when they're not at work. Can you have a word with your bosses and tell them to leave workers alone when they're, when they've ended the shift?
It is a real challenge. I think we've all come to see that sometimes you really have to be disciplined and to decide to sort of turn off at a certain time and that's it. But I think again for managers and for business, that's a really key important thing, because if your workforce are not getting the downtime they need, and if they don't have that sort of separation, then they're not going to be performing in the best possible way during working hours. So it's in everyone's interest to get this right. But again, it's about making sure that the right balance is struck, because for some, again, working parents or people with caring responsibilities, they might really benefit from being able to catch up on things in the evening where they've had to step away sort of for a few hours during the day. And that flexibility can be really valuable, but it's not necessary for sort of everyone, and many of us will really enjoy signing on at 9 and signing off at 5, and that's really important to make sure that individuals are getting the right support to be able to perform as best they can in their particular circumstances.
Well, this new post-pandemic workplace is taking shape. What's it going to look like? It's going to be very different, certainly. Joe Fitzsimons from the Institute of Directors, thanks a lot for joining us on GB News.
Thanks.